hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, strange is the affair or the matter of the believer. It's very strange, the Prophet ﷺ says, that his affairs are all good, they're all khair. And only this applies to the believer and nobody else. So what about the affair? If goodness comes to him or her, the believer, and they are thankful, that is good for them, that is khair for them. And if difficulty or hardship comes to them, they are patient and that is good for them. This is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So I would like to, inshallah ta'ala, just spend a few moments discussing this hadith, particularly the gratefulness part. But what this hadith really is one of the pinnacle ahadith and actually teachings of our deen that help us get this right paradigm shift, to actually see things differently than what people actually see things at on the surface level. This hadith helps us see things clearly. And what this hadith tells us is that no matter what the input is, if you get good, whatever good is, or bad, whatever that input is, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what the process, what takes in the input, the good or the bad, needs to produce something that gives khair. Right? And that khair that comes out of the believer, kana khairallah, whether it's hardship or ease or goodness or anything bad that comes to the person, that person, it's not about the external, it's about the internal. How does a person internalize the inputs? That's what matters. It doesn't matter what the input is. It doesn't matter if you win $1 million or, la samahallah, there's a disease in the family. They're challenging, we're not saying that. But all of these are inputs and they are processed differently by every individual. And what the key is to produce the same output, and that is khair. How do you take that input and change it into khair for yourself? This is what the hadith is teaching us, right? And there's two things to do. To thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when things you perceive are good, and that's why I say you perceive. People perceive different things to be good. And things that you perceive are to be evil or bad, then you are patient. That internal process, how you process that, this is why this hadith is very important to internalize, is what matters. What matters? What inputs are, it doesn't matter. If you get a believer and a disbeliever looking at the mountains, if anyone's gone to Banff and you look at the mountains, people are looking at the same mountains. One person will say, oh, they're beautiful mountains, and one person will say, subhanallah. It's the same input, processed differently. And how do you process? How are you supposed to process these inputs? We have to have the lens, what takes in the inputs, the lens of the akhirah. So what we have to continue reminding ourselves of is that whether it's good or bad, it's temporary. We all know there's ups and downs in life. Whatever good you get, لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا أَتَاكُمْ, so that you don't despair of difficulty or become overly joyous when it's easy or good. Anytime it comes to you, look at it that this is temporary, right? But what's lasting and everlasting is my response to this input. How I respond is what's going to be recorded until the Day of Judgment. That's the lens of the akhirah. And this is what helps us gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It allows us to shape our character and get the reward of the akhirah. So when it comes to gratitude, when there's good, right? And the scholar said, actually, khair or good, whatever a person perceives to be good, is a bigger test than if you get bad. If you're given abundance, it's a bigger test than if you're constricted. Why? You think about it. Because the tests, they're both tests, by the way, whether you get a lot or you don't get any. So the brothers and sisters in Gaza, they're getting the difficult test of being constricted and limited with everything. We have abundance. That doesn't mean they're tested and we're not. We actually have a bigger test. Because when you're tested with abundance, your reaction is, I have the authority to give, I have the power to give or withhold. They don't have a choice. Really, they don't. We have a choice. Right? And number two, when you are tested with difficulty, humans naturally, when they have difficulty, they look for help. So they seek support. And they seek support, for example, if you're a believer, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a natural inclination or gravitation towards Allah or a higher power. But when somebody is given a lot, that actually distracts people from their purpose, from being grateful. And so that is why it's a difficult test. This hadith reminds us to be thankful when we have what we've got. And that is good for you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will multiply that for you. And Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam in the Quran says, لِيَبْلُوَنِي أَأَشْكُرُ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him blessings. The arsh, the throne of the Queen of Sheba was brought to him. And he said, this is a test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to test me to see if I'm grateful or not. Right? وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. Even if you're given abundance, your children, your wealth is all fitna, is all a test. So that's the perspective of being grateful to pass that test. How are we grateful? We use what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. Not to say, it's important to say alhamdulillah and to feel it, but to use what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us to serve people, to help the ummah. Use it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And very quickly, inshallah, the last part, which is about being patient when it's difficult. Now, when you experience a loss, and it's difficult, but you have to train yourself to think this way. When you experience a loss, think about it as it's an opportunity to gain something. I lost something, but this has now created a vacuum that I can gain Allah's pleasure. I gain Allah's pleasure by being content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote for me. Does that mean I may not feel sadness? No, you can feel sadness. Does that mean I shouldn't do something about it? No, you should do something about it. Try to change your situation. But at the end of the day, you don't blame Allah. You don't complain. You don't say, why me? You don't distress and say, you know what, I've had enough and I'm not going to do da'wah work, I'm not going to go to the masjid, I'm not going to help so and so, I have my own problems. That doesn't stop you from doing what's right. This is patience. This is patience. And the reward of patience, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُم بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah says there's no quantity to reward patience. Allah didn't put a number. بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. You can't measure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. He knows the difficulty that we are enduring, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's immeasurable. So I hope that was beneficial. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who are thankful and those who are patient. يروي مسلم في صحيحه عن صحيب عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال عجبا لأمر المؤمن إن أمره كله خير وليس ذاك لأحد إلا للمؤمن إن أصابته سراء شكر فكان خيرا له وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له. صدق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك